An arrest in a deadly shooting in Phoenix. King David Sandoval facing first-degree murder charges tonight. He's accused of shooting and killing Jonathan Cordova after the two argued over stolen property. The victim was found in a vacant lot near 35th Avenue in Buckeye. He later died at the hospital.
Deputy fire marshals tell me he called in a tip about a woman who was letting him stay in her Boston Cove apartment. That woman is a sailor. According to the deputy fire marshal, West was an acquaintance of the sailor's boyfriend. He was homeless and had been staying in her place for a few weeks. West told NCIS the sailor was going to sneak her boyfriend on board the USS George Washington and that together they were going to blow it up.
Fire at the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas. It broke out on the roof last night. The Vegas Strip was closed to traffic as firefighters doused the flames. Wow, look at that. The fire was out in less than 30 minutes. Now, no injuries were reported. No word yet on the cause of this fire.
The Sheriff's Department says 37-year-old Bo Engel, an industrial technology teacher at Tipton High School, faces 10 counts of child seduction involving a student at the school. Police say this involves multiple incidents. Engel was arrested this afternoon.
The people living here along Jefferson Avenue and other streets in Covington's Peaslesburg neighborhood got up this morning to find these flyers on their lawns. One says, "Save our land, join the Klan." The other, "The real face of Islam." And let me tell you, they are not happy about it.
I find it disgusting. It's nothing but hate crime. Wherever you're from, don't bring it here.
U.S. military has unleashed its boldest strike yet on ISIS. The Pentagon says American forces in Afghanistan dropped the military's largest non-nuclear bomb on an ISIS target in Afghanistan.
It is called the mother of all bombs, and it was dropped on a cave complex in a border province with Pakistan.
This Pentagon video shows the moment the U.S. dropped the biggest non-nuclear bomb it's ever used in combat. The target, Afghanistan's Achin district, near the Pakistani border. People here say they could feel it when the so-called mother of all bombs exploded.
There were ISIL bases over there, and they had activity in those areas. Last night's bomb was really huge. When it dropped, everything was shaking. This is a positive move that ISIL was eliminated.
The U.S. has been testing the GBU-43 bomb, or Moab, for years. But this is the first time it's been used. It was deployed against a series of ISIL tunnels in Nangarhar province. The Afghan Ministry of Defense says dozens of fighters were killed. They believe an ISIL weapons cache was also destroyed.
The foreign forces carried out an airstrike last night, which was different from previous attacks. In this strike, ISIL hideouts, which were previously targeted by unmanned aircraft but were not destroyed, were targeted and destroyed. Important and foreign members of ISIL were staying in these hideouts.
The U.S. has defended the use of the weapon.
This was the right weapon against the right target. I want to assure the people of Afghanistan that our forces take every possible precaution to prevent civilian casualties.
The Afghan government has confirmed it knew about the attack before it happened, but not everyone is cheering the U.S. action. Former Afghan President Hamid Karzai took to Twitter to say, "I vehemently and in the strongest words condemn the dropping of the latest weapon, the largest non-nuclear bomb on Afghanistan by the U.S. military. This is not the war on terror, but the inhuman and most brutal misuse of our country as a testing ground for new and dangerous weapons." U.S. forces have been battling ISIL in Afghanistan since 2015. They estimate there are 600 to 800 fighters in the country.
Security expert Dr. David Grantham, who says the Trump administration is trying to send the message that it will use whatever is in its arsenal to combat a threat. This is a major shift from the Obama administration. Now, if this trend of engaging enemies continues, Grantham says we could start seeing a lot of movement out of Texas in terms of deployments. Fort Hood, he says, is one of the most widely used forces in the U.S. Army.
North Korea knows how to put on a parade, and this week it's pomp on overdrive. Celebrations are building up ahead of Saturday's so-called Day of the Sun, the 105th anniversary of the nation's founder, Kim Il-sung. But the flowers and fanfare cannot mask what the international community sees as a growing nuclear threat. Speculation is rife that the military is to conduct another test imminently. Satellite imagery show continued activity at the Punggye-ri nuclear test site, which monitoring groups determined to be primed and ready. In a rare interview, a senior official has spoken out, blaming the United States for provoking the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or DPRK, the official name of the North.
We've concluded that Trump's policy towards the DPRK is becoming more vicious and more aggressive. It's not the DPRK, but the U.S., which makes problems. A nuclear test is something that our Supreme Headquarters decides. At a time and place that the Supreme Headquarters deems necessary, it will take place.
A U.S. aircraft carrier group is currently on the move to the waters off the Korean peninsula as the U.S. military conducts its biggest ever joint exercises with South Korea. President Trump has also been tweeting on the issue, saying that the North is looking for trouble.
I don't know if this sends a message. It doesn't make any difference if it does or not. North Korea is a problem. The problem will be taken care of.
North Korea has conducted 5 nuclear tests in the past. The most recent in September was the largest. The regime's hallmark unpredictability intensifies the threat of the next test, whenever it may be.
For the second time in a week, the Trump administration leveraging the full force of the U.S. military.
We are so proud of our military, and it was another successful event.
But the president doesn't appear to have personally signed off on the hit in Afghanistan, instead suggesting he's authorized the military to make such moves.
Everybody knows exactly what happened, and what I do is I authorize my military. We have the greatest military in the world, and they've done a job as usual, so we have given them total authorization.
And Trump demurred on whether the move doubles as a warning shot to North Korea.
I don't know if this sends a message. It doesn't make any difference if it does or not. North Korea is a problem.
The strike in Afghanistan, a follow-through on at least one of Trump's campaign trail promises to aggressively target ISIS.
I would bomb the shit out of them.
It's a rare moment of follow-through as of late. The president took to Twitter Wednesday night to claim, one by one, we are keeping our promises. But Trump's recent proclamations sound a whole lot different from his campaign trail pledges. Take Trump's view on NATO this week.
I said it was obsolete. It's no longer obsolete.
A sharp departure from this campaign trail rhetoric.
Number one, NATO is obsolete. Number two, the countries in NATO are not paying their fair share.
On China, President Trump tells the Wall Street Journal they're not currency manipulators. But candidate Trump relentlessly vowed to label the country a currency manipulator on day one of his presidency.
We are going to label China a currency manipulator. We can't continue to allow China to rape our country.
And suddenly, the president has a positive view of Federal Reserve Chairwoman Janet Yellen, telling the Wall Street Journal, "I like her, I respect her." An about-face from this assessment during the campaign.
In my opinion, Janet Yellen is highly political, and she's not raising rates for a very specific reason, because Obama told her not to.
Trump even appears to be souring on Russia.
We may be at an all-time low in terms of relationship with Russia.
After lavishing praise on Russian President Vladimir Putin during the campaign.
I think I'd get along very well with Vladimir Putin. I just think so.
To be sure, Trump is still holding out a glimmer of hope on repairing ties with Moscow. Trump tweeting today, "Things will work out fine between the U.S. and Russia. At the right time, everyone will come to their senses and there will be lasting peace."
Moving on now, Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Bahram Qasemi says the United States is in no position to comment on the human rights situation in other countries. Qasemi made the remarks after the U.S. added a senior official with Iran's prisons organization, as well as another Iranian institution, to its sanctions list. Washington has accused Sohrab Soleimani and the Tehran Prisons Organization of human rights violations. Qasemi slammed what he called Washington's repetitive and biased moves, saying that it is a flagrant violation of international law. He noted that the decision is aimed at covering up human rights violations inside the U.S. and distracting the world's public attention from Washington's support for its allies, including Israel, that have an awful human rights record.
A monitored group in Syria says the transfer of Shiite populations of 2 rebel-encircled towns has started. This comes in exchange for moving Sunni rebels and civilians out of 2 other towns under government siege. The majority Shiite towns of Al-Fua and Kefraya in northwestern Idlib province have long been besieged by insurgents. The British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says residents are being evacuated by bus but have not yet crossed into government-held territory.
Those in Kefraya and Fua also relied on airdrops, but neither sides were able to break the siege militarily. The evacuees are scheduled to reach their final destination at the same time. The regime supporters have already arrived at the crossing point, but they will have to wait several hours before those on the move from Zabadani and Madaya get to the edges of rebel-controlled territory. Once they arrive, preparations will be underway for another swap in the coming days. It will include the release of prisoners held in government jails, including women.
Now, during today's meeting of the Russian, Iranian and Syrian foreign ministers, the diplomats stressed the need for an investigation into the incident in Idlib province, claimed by the West to be a chemical attack. Medina Kachanova was following the talks.
The 3 sides are calling for a full-scale investigation into what happened in the Idlib province. And Syria says that it is ready to work with the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons to ensure that. Now, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says that the West is still putting up certain obstacles.
We sense reluctance to the proposal of holding an independent investigation, which emerged yesterday at the special session of the Executive Council of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. We will not tolerate such attempts and will fight for establishing the truth. When the Syrian government stands accused, the OPCW reacts within days. They express concern, but they never visit the sites in the rebel-controlled areas, citing safety concerns.
Iran blames the U.S. for not wanting the facts to be established and also for using the situation to fulfill its own interests. Now, Russia's foreign minister said that the U.S. act of aggression was obviously meant to derail the peace process in Syria and also to find a way for a regime change in the country. Sergei Lavrov also claimed that the so-called chemical attack in the Idlib province was staged. Now, Syria once again repeated at the this meeting that there are no chemical weapons in its possession as the country dismantled all its toxic arsenal. This whole process was documented by the OPCW, and that the process of dismantling was supervised by different countries, including the United States as well.
Of course, there's been growing pressure from the United States for Russia to distance itself from Syria and Iran. The US Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, in Moscow earlier this week, pressing Russian officials to reconsider their positions. But there seems to be little sign that the Kremlin has any interests yet in abandoning its long-time Middle East allies.
A lot of people wish they were in Trump's shoes. Senator Ted Cruz, while running for president, said we should bomb ISIS back to the Stone Age. Hillary Clinton promised to obliterate Iran if it attacked Israel. Using the GBU-43B, also known as the mother of all bombs, is just another example of U.S.'s psychotic use of weapons meant to destroy massive numbers of people and property. With a radius of 1 mile, the number of civilians likely to be murdered by Trump is incalculable. What we'll probably never know will be the true impact of this weapon as it was detonated, unless there are independent investigative reporters on the scene afterwards. Hillary Clinton lost the White House, but her mania for death and destruction live on in Trump. With personnel looking to make this administration more isolationist being removed, we're seeing a reversal of policies. China is no longer a currency manipulator. NATO is relevant. Being BFF, best friends forever, with Putin is out the window. And now massive military presence in Afghanistan and elsewhere is now policy. Winners are the armaments corporations. What's the point of having a weapon you're not going to use and then replace? Raytheon, for whom Trump has stock in, was the big winner when Trump tried to show how tough and compassionate he was in avenging Syria's beautiful little babies after the gas attack. The world is stunned right now over this latest attack in Afghanistan. Social media is appalled. Foreign policy experts wonder who's next. North Korea? Trump is sending his fleet over there as he's spreading terror elsewhere. Donald Trump is out of control and a lot of people love it. Or maybe because he's being controlled by the deep state and all those in Congress who love a good war as long as they don't get their feet wet themselves.
According to officials on Friday, a man accused of stealing multiple firearms from a Wisconsin gun store and sending an anti-government manifesto to Donald Trump has been arrested following 9 days on the run. According to the Rock County Sheriff's Office, Joseph Allen Jakubowski was found Thursday night this week in Vernon County. Back on April 4th, the 32-year-old broke into a gun store in Janesville. He then wrote a 161-page manifesto detailing plans to launch attacks with the 18 firearms he allegedly stole. Officials add that Jakubowski has had several run-ins with police in the past, mostly for traffic violations.
Kids who were killed in Syria.
We believe in freedom, will not rest until it comes. Donald Trump does not represent us. No wall, no ban, no rain, no wall, no ban, no rain, no wall, no ban, no rain, no wall, no ban, no rain.
Tonight, the commander-in-chief is once again spending the weekend here in South Florida. You could call him the Palm Beach president, and it costs local taxpayers millions. CBS 4's Hank Tester is live from Palm Beach with a plan to recoup some of that cash. Hank.
Well, you put it quite well. Donald Trump loves coming to Palm Beach. He's over there tonight, Mar-a-Lago. The locals here, they're not so into it because taxpayers are getting hit in the pocketbook. Let's take a look. He's back. Trip number 7 since becoming president of the United States. It is Donald Trump being consistent. No flip-flop here. He likes coming to his winter White House. Trump arriving in West Palm Beach just before 7, quickly made his way across town to Mar-a-Lago. As usual, heavy-duty security, setting up early in the day, roadside checkpoints, Coast Guard, and local police boats at the ready. In the 80 days of the Trump administration, presidential travel has cost U.S. taxpayers $21 million. Here in Palm Beach County, it costs roughly $60,000 a day to provide local security.
I can't really conceive of the idea that President Trump would want to impose these kind of costs on us, on the local taxpayers.
Trump's security has cost Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office a total of more than $3.5 million. So far, 3 years to go in Trump's first term. The county mayor says the county's been going back and forth with the feds to get reimbursed.
It would be nice to know if the federal government is going to reimburse us, or we will have to, you have to balance your checkbook. We will have to reduce budgets in some areas, or increase the taxes to pay for the president's protection.
There have been suggestions that Mar-a-Lago be taxed at a special rate to help defray expenses. Not a good idea, says Commissioner Hal Valici. Only one way to solve the money issue: talk to Trump.
I think our best avenue of approach is to figure out a way to get this in front of the president. Probably dispose of it in less than a minute. I mean, if he really were to know the facts.
Well, probably this whole thing has a long ways to go. Meanwhile, the president, pretty low-key this weekend, no scheduled public events.
Tonight, CNN has learned that British and European intelligence intercepted communications between Trump associates and Russian officials and other Russians known to Western intelligence during the U.S. presidential campaign, and shared those communications with their U.S. counterparts. Multiple U.S. and Western officials tell CNN. These sources stress that at no point did Western intelligence, including Britain's GCHQ, which is responsible for communications surveillance, target these Trump associates. Instead, their communications were picked up as incidental collection during routine surveillance of known Russian targets. The U.S. and Britain are part of the so-called Five Eyes Agreement, along with Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, which calls for open sharing among member nations of a broad range of intelligence. This new information comes as former Trump foreign policy advisor Carter Page provides a confusing, even conflicting story about his contacts with Russian intelligence. He has denied that he was a foreign agent.
It's just such a joke that it's beyond words.
Page told CNN's Jake Tapper that when he visited Russia last July, he never discussed easing sanctions on Russia related to the seizing of Crimea.
Did you ever talk with anyone there about maybe President Trump, if he were elected, then candidate Trump, would be willing to get rid of the sanctions?
Never any direct conversation such as that. I mean, it's...
What do you mean direct conversation? I don't know what that means, direct conversation.
Well, I'm just saying, no, that was never said, no.
But interviewed on ABC News this morning, Page could not provide a clear answer.
Well, I don't recall every single word that I ever said, but I would never make any offer or intimate anything that was in the process.
But it sounds like from what you're saying, it's possible that you may have discussed the easing of sanctions.
Something may have come up in a conversation. I have no recollection, and there is nothing specifically that I would have done that would have given people that impression, George.
But you can't say without equivocation that you didn't discuss the easing of sanctions.
Someone may have brought it up. I have no recollection, and if it was not something I was offering or someone was asking for.
Poland has welcomed the deployment of a new multinational NATO battalion in the country's northeast. The country's president has called it a historic moment for his country. The base of operation is Oshish. This marks the first time NATO troops have been placed so close to Russian territory. The US-led battalion comprises about 1,000 troops, but also includes troops from Britain and Romania. Croatian troops are expected to join later. The decision was made during a NATO summit in Warsaw last year.
Bardzo się cieszę, że mogę być z Państwem tu dziś jako prezydent Rzeczypospolitej.
Threat against all of us, and we will respond accordingly. We will uphold the agreements we have.
You all. Thank you. Życzę Wam wszystkim powodzenia w wykonywanej misji.